Right, in our next example for section 2.3, we're going to look at another type of way of visualizing our categorical data. So we already talked about bar charts, and now we're going to talk about pie charts. So a pie chart shows a piece of the pie for each observed category, right? So we're looking at and thinking about these as being wedges of a circular pie. The size of the piece is proportional to the frequency of that category. The pie represents 100% of the data, and the central angle of each piece can be calculated by multiplying the relative frequency by 360 degrees, which we'll talk a little bit more about in our last example. There is a way to construct pie charts on StatCrunch as well. Again, look for kind of a more detailed explanation on D2L as far as that goes. But let's go back to our first example. In our first example, we were looking at the number of students in each class enrolled in an introductory statistics class. Again, first-year students are not shown because there were none in the sample. Right, so there's our frequency, our relative frequency, and then we have our pie chart that goes along with this. Right, now this question asks us, would the pie chart be easier or more difficult to read without an accompanying table? Right, so if we were to ignore, right, this chart here and just look at that, right, we don't have as much information. We don't have any percentages labeled or anything along those lines. So in this case, if we were to take away that frequency distribution table, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for us to read that information. So would the pie chart be easier or more difficult? We are going to say more difficult. Right, and we're asked why. It'll be more difficult without the table because we have less detail or numbers. So a little bit more difficult to read without our table because we lose our detail. Right, so a lot of times when we're looking at pie charts, we may see a pie chart with additional labels. And so it could be percentages labeled directly in the pie chart. It could be a table of information next to a pie chart. So it's something that's often shown kind of in conjunction with something else if we want to give detailed information. If we just want a basic overview, then we don't really need the table. We can still tell in looking at this that most of them are unknown, that the smallest group is graduates, and the other three are in the middle, kind of close to one another.